Hello, and welcome to Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragon. I'm your host and maester of ceremonies, Jamie East. We've got some news a few days ago here on the podcast that made us feel as if all our name days had come at once. After the release of our second episode, we were officially the #1 TV and film podcast in the whole of the UK on the Apple charts, which was amazing. Sorry, Commode and Mayo, back the hell off. It looks like your watch has ended, although I would imagine they're already back at #1 now. But seriously, it was amazing. We're so delighted that the show's been doing so well, and we want to see it long continue. And I guess we can announce now, House the Dragon's been renewed for season 2. I'm the commissioner of this bloody thing, so I may as well recommission Dragoncast for season 2 as well. So yes, I've now commissioned us as well. Yeah, but we want to build a real community of fans that love House of the Dragon and love talking about it. And it's been really good to get all the feedback as well. So thank you so much. So if you do like what you hear, please share the podcast on your socials to help us spread the word. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications and all that kind of gubbins as well. And I've also started doing a Twitter Spaces at 10 a.m. on a Monday. So if you're one of the eager beavers that does watch at 2 a.m., stick around. Maybe have a nap first and then come back for 10 a.m. and we'll include some of your comments and some of your reactions to the episode within the podcast. We've got a couple of good ones coming up later on. Anyway, joining me this week to examine some Hot D. That is the acronym that George R.R. Martin has himself given with the show, and we're sticking with it. Does he know what? Does he know what a sliding of the Hot D means, though? I'm not sure George R.R. Martin. George, mate. That means dick. I don't know if you know that. That means getting a slice of dick, but there we go. As always, journalist, writer, and the crushed velvet glove on the hand of the king, Chris Mandle.
Hello.
And this week's special guest, Radio 1 presenter, TV presenter, all-round House of the Dragon aficionado and super fan. It's me old mucker, Rickie Haywood-Williams. How are you, sir?
Hello, mate. How are you both? Good to see you.
Really good. Good to see you too. Good to see you too. Let's get into it.
Yes.
I don't want to bring a downer onto things, but we're already a fifth of the way through the season.
Oh, James.
It feels like I don't want to rush into things or not, but that's where we are now. So excitement of the premiere is out, is done and dusted. We're now kind of like, I guess, firmly getting under the fingernails of the crux of what the story is likely to be. People were kind of quite surprised at the show's got scale, but the story feels quite insular, as we discussed last week. It's very much a focus on one family rather than the sprawling kind of kingdoms of Westeros. But I think we're getting a glimpse as to why that's still going to be pretty epic. Rickie, takeaways from your initial reactions from episode 2, which was called The Rogue Prince.
The Rogue Prince, indeed. Daemon Targaryen really kind of letting us know the sort of character that he's going to be, the sort of things he's going to bring to the table, which is basically just chaos. He's just going to bring chaos at every available opportunity. I love the way that Matt Smith plays this character, but Daemon's character seems to be someone that I feel like we're going to really enjoy the journey of. There's a lot of flashpoints in there that he brings. I'm sure we're going to get onto them a little bit later, but yeah, stealing a dragon egg. I mean, if you want to cause a ruckus, go out and steal a dragon's egg, right? Why not do that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a risky one. Chris, what about you?
I loved it. I mean, I've said this before, but like my dream episodes are ones where people just sit around discussing like trade channels and like government. And I was like, there was loads of that this episode. For most of it, it was quite like a meeting that could have been an email, but and then you have this amazing sort of final set piece on Dragonstone with 2 dragons squaring off. And yeah, I thought it was great. They're really setting up the stakes, but I think already the show has like a kind of laser focus that Game of Thrones didn't have, where there would be episodes in Game of Thrones where it was just people walking around like eating bread, and you're like, what's going on? Like, where's this going? And at least with House of the Dragon, I think there's a really good sense that they know what story they're telling. So I'm so in.
I mean, first and foremost, let's talk about the new titles. I don't know why we didn't get them for Ep 1, but they're obviously still rendering. They're still in like the Pixar village or wherever. Industrial Light and Magic was still kind of like having to plug in a few more Mac Pros to get it done. Same theme music. same use of the sigils, same kind of clockwork like motion, but obviously rivers of blood. It looked fresh. It looked pretty kind of like it looked quite modern. Chris, what did you think to the? There's obviously been a decision made whereby it's like, right, let's not fuck about with the theme tune. Everyone loves it. Let's not fuck about with the title sequence. Everyone loves it. Do you think that was a wise move?
Well, I think they're going into this whole thing with like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, they're not trying to reinvent the wheel or anything, and I get that. And producer Connor and I were talking about this before we sort of started recording. Like, it's great. Game of Thrones intro is one of the best intros on modern telly, in my opinion. I do think a little bit. I'm like, that's it. Like, that's all you came up with. Like, it feels a bit like the day before your your coursework's due in, and you're like, oh, I'll just like copy and paste it off Wikipedia. But it's good, and I'm old fashioned like that. I'm like, the intro should be like really exciting, and you should love watching it. But I was kind of like, oh, I've seen this like a million times. But I couldn't have made a better one, so I'm not taking a pop at anyone.
Well, exactly. Maybe they did try and just thought, actually, this is a nightmare. Why don't we just stick with what we've got? One thing I'm interested in, Ricky, as we know from Game of Thrones of old, was that the titles evolved and they followed the kind of storyline and even gave away small clues. And HBO are really good at that. They do that with Westworld as well, which is... they throw a few Easter eggs in there, and a few kind of bit of foreshadowing is often in there. I maybe need to watch it a fair few times. I'm sure there's an entire subreddit kicking off about every trickle of blood. What were your thoughts about it?
I'm the same as Chris. I think if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. I think they probably did think about changing the titles and just thought, you know what, we don't need that. We don't need the ag. We don't need the aggro of people kind of like pointing the finger, talking about like some terrible titles that we've made for the spin-off series. So I think it was a great move. Keep the music. We love the music. It's just iconic, isn't it? We absolutely love it. It would have been horrible if they tried to bring in some new music and it didn't quite hit. But I love the blood. I love the blood. It's Targaryen. Fire and blood. That's what we want. That's what we want from the opening scene. So yeah, they nailed it for me.
So the one thing I noticed watching it was the way the blood sort of trickles down. There's a couple of points where it sort of branches off, and it looks like those red weirwood trees that they kind of have. I know, like in Game of Thrones, that's like the old religion, and the new religion is like the faith of the Seven. But I think at this point in the show, everyone like prays under those weirwood trees and that sort of thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting. This blood sort of branching out, family tree, like ancestry. Like, I thought it was kind of a little bit more rustic than the sort of steampunky Game of Thrones one. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it kind of it kind of trickled around and swallowed up all the other houses. That was what that was the kind of overall message, wasn't it? That nothing can escape the Targaryen kind of rule. With the music, and there was a choir version, like I think it's in the closing titles, isn't it?
Yeah.
Presumably singing in High Valyrian or something. We didn't have that before, did we? That's all new. That's a bit like when Phantom Menace came back and they had a choir singing the Star Wars theme tune.
It's like a sort of a different version, or like a I don't know.
Right, episode 2 opened in kind of like different side of Game of Thrones that I kind of like forgotten about, like the gruesome crab feeder. And if someone said to you, right, we're gonna have a guy that feeds people to crabs, on paper, not the most gruesome of sounding of villains. Sounds a bit Scooby-Doo, but actually looked kind of great. We had a few amputees tied to crosses that were being slowly devoured by kind of like, well, just crabs really. The crab feed is taking on a bit of mythical status. We saw quite orcish in kind of appearance. We got a slight glimpse of him there. Not had much to don't really know much about him. Is he being built up quite a lot? Is he going to be a fearsome foe, do you think, Ricky?
You're right. They are building him up. He sounds like he's here to. He means business, basically. He looks amazing. We see that he feeds people to the crabs. I think he kind of ties them up or chains them up or nails them to a mast, and then as the tide come in, they kind of like they drown, don't they? And they get eaten by the crabs afterwards and whatever. So pretty gruesome way to kill someone. So I quite like the way that they're building up his character.
It looks like he might have grayscale, Chris. What do you?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like a mask or like like he's wearing other people's skin or something, but he definitely needs a bit of E45 cream, I think. Just to drink a bit more water. Like
He needs a
whatever's
bit of a
going on with
vino.
that. Yeah,
Olive
yeah,
Ole.
but I think it's a very.
He needs a bit of me time with some vino.
I think it's a very interesting, savage, kind of weird villain. I don't think he'll be around long because I think, as we got to at the end of the episode, Daemon and Corlys seem to be joining together to sort this guy out. But when they said that Game of Thrones was doing this spin-off and they were having this absolutely bonkers budget, I thought it would get spent on dragons. I didn't realise it was also going to get spent on like 30,000 CGI crabs. But credit to them, they look absolutely horrifying, and I don't want to ever swim in the ocean again. So like they succeeded in that front.
No. I don't think he'll be around long because he seems to be there to serve almost like a subplot point to kind of for it's a means to an end to kind of to force Corlys into kind of demanding action. I think that's the bit that I took from it. We saw a couple of characters, briefly touched upon in episode 1 who seem to be settling into their roles quite well. Mainly for Rhaenyra seems to be kind of gathering her posse of kind of trusted steeds or kind of men. So we had Harold Westerling, who was who we saw a little bit in episode 1, who's the commander of the King's Guard, who was the guy that got kind of like when Rhaenyra started trying to stick her oar in the board meeting in the small council, was just like, maybe you want to take her for a bubble tea at the local shopping mall. That might, and she got kind of like sidetracked there. And then Sir Kristen Cole, who was all, the second you saw the kind of the kind of queue of knights waiting to kind of take your place, that was like, oh come on, we know who it was going to be. This is like she's gonna choose the Oberyn, and he was right there. I thought it was quite good that I enjoyed the scene. It was just like, hang on a sec, it was a bit kind of like, hang on a sec, these fucking MPs, all they've done is gone to Eton. Where's the ones that have like been on the picket lines? It was a bit like that, wasn't it? Which I quite enjoid.
The tawny knights, I love that term. Just tournament knights.
Exactly.
Guess, right?
Yeah, they're just showboaters. Where's the ones that got calluses on their fingers from. And we saw Kristen's relationship, I guess further and cement. What do you think to that, Rickie? Are they going to be? And again, it's so difficult not to just keep kind of drawing comparisons or kind of comparing. There's a bit of Jaime and Brienne. There's a bit of there's a bit of Podrick, and there's a whole thing going on there. But what did you make of that? They seem quite well suited.
They do seem quite well suited. I think obviously he's a dashing looking young guy. That kind of throws itself back to when we first meet Jaime Lannister and that kind of like that dashing hero type looking character. But he's got a bit of spice about him as well. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. Where he gave a bit to Daemon when they met at Dragonstone, and I think Daemon calls him Crispin rather than Kristen. And then he's like, well, maybe you remember me. I knocked you off your horse at the tournament. So that was a nice moment. It just goes to show that he's probably gonna be around for a little while.
He looks
so we know that. I think it's fair to say.
I'm looking forward to seeing season 4 Kristen, because at the moment he's kind of like, he's a bit like Tyrion was, where he's all kind of like dashing and clean. He needs a big fuck off scar across his face. He needs a load of dragon shit on his armor. He needs
a perm as well.
He needs the 1,000-yard stare. He needs to have seen some stuff. He's a bit fresh out of college at the moment. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, agreed. I think weirdly, Jaime Lannister comparison, the best thing to happen to him was getting a hand chopped off. He became a little bit more complicated when he had a sort of midlife crisis. We need. I mean, Kristen, very handsome man, but he needs to get uglied up a little bit before I can really invest in him as a character.
Let's lose an eye. Hopefully, he loses an eye.
Chopped off. Just go grey a bit. Get a bit of world experience.
Yeah, it's first day at school, isn't it? The blazers are a little bit too big. They've got mum's haircut. Exactly. And Harold Westerling, he seems like a grizzly old kind of fucker, doesn't he? In charge of everything, kind of has been kind of appointed babysitter, really, of Rhaenyra. he seemed like a good guy, though. It's difficult to tell. He does seem like a good stand-up, solid guy, Chris, right?
Am I right in thinking that he has a Scottish accent? Right? Is he Scottish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't dwell on accents. I don't
think
think we
so,
dwell
yeah.
on accents too much in Game of Thrones, do we?
I just find it so funny that you're like, yeah, and there's a Scottish guy here for some reason. Like,
Yeah, just there, just right there.
I know, like that, not even in like, I didn't need them to try and explain it. It's just so funny that it's like, oh yeah, it's Scotsman here. It's all burly.
It's the Sean Connery of Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Well, it's like Davos in the last season is just a Geordie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Geordie.
The Onion
brilliant.
Knight. Yeah,
brilliant.
exactly. Let's talk about some of the kind of standout scenes. Then there were kind of two big takeouts for me. There were two things going on. There was the succession strand, and then there was the Daemon strand, and obviously they're intertwined in many weird ways. But talking about Daemon's kind of section first, stealing the egg of Balon. Regardless of, we can talk about Daemon being a grey character. He thinks he's a good guy. He's not really a bad guy. He just wants what's right. That was a dick move. I mean, he knew he was not fucking about there, was he? He knew what was going to happen. What do we think to that, Ricky?
I just reckon he's just, like I said earlier, he's just about chaos. He's just about causing drama for drama's sake. He knew that if he took the dragon's egg, he went to Dragonstone anyway when he wasn't allowed to. He took the seat at Dragonstone, which is supposed to be Rhaenyra's seat. So he's basically squatting there for 6 months or however long it is. So he knows he's like taking the piss there. Yeah, exactly. And then when he doesn't get a reaction, because obviously Viserys has let him stay there without any challenge, he's then, right, what else can I do to try and, stick two fingers up at these guys? So he goes and steals the dragon's egg that was supposed to be for Baelor, his dead nephew. So he knows exactly what he's doing. And then you kind of see that he didn't really want all of that smoke when Rhaenyra came anyway, because he kind of just gave it up quite easily. If he was really serious, I reckon he would have got Caraxes to just burn some heads for a little bit. But he didn't do that. He just gave it up quite easily. I think
they're quite clever in their use of dragons because ultimately, theoretically, Daemon could just wait for one of the all the other dragons to be asleep and just go and burn everything, and that's the end of House of the Dragon. But so they have to be quite tactful in their use, because as I think Rhaenyra or someone said towards the end of it, it's like, doesn't matter how tactful you are, and that we've got a dragon. And it's Corlys, isn't it? That's his big gripe about the whole thing. It's just like the only thing that stopped the Velaryons kind of like getting power was the fact that they didn't have dragons, which is true. They just fluked it. It's they are the Windsors of Westeros. They're just there because they just had a bigger weapon. Chris, the interesting bit, what was Daemon playing at? Because he was just bullshitting, because Mysaria, she had no idea that he'd kind of like done this. She had no idea that she was supposedly getting married. She certainly had no idea she was pregnant. And he got caught out very quickly. Rhaenyra was just like, and you're with child one day. I didn't say now, did I? He did very quickly turn into David Brent at the quiz, didn't he? Just like, well, not strictly speaking, if we're going to split hairs, quite literally.
Yeah, I thought that had more plot twists than like an episode of Emmerdale. There was like wedding announcement, oh, that was a sham, fake pregnancy, stole an egg, gave it back, 2 dragons. It was just like drama. But yeah, I mean, Daemon is putting Daemon first at front and center. I do think though, like he was kind of saying, when he had this confrontation on the bridge, if I have a son, he should get a dragon egg, and the dragon that was given to my nephew is no longer needed because he died. He's kind of being awful, but he's rooted in some sense of like there is some rules that he's trying to follow and some kind of rule book that he's playing to, and it's a lot of it is tradition, and he's like, when will I be accepted as like one of you, because I'm trying to like get what's mine. I mean, I do think it had elements when he was holding that very heavy-looking egg. It just made me think of like Michael Jackson hanging his baby off the hotel balcony. I was like, you're gonna drop it.
You think Martin Bashir was just off camera, just kind of like...
It's just like, do you want to catch it? I was like, no, you can't do that. But yeah, I mean, it was just all a bit of bluster.
He literally does throw it at her, doesn't he?
Just tosses it back. I enjoyed I loved the little like incubator, like hot kind of like Le Creuset kind of like dragon egg incubator that they had was lovely.
Yeah,
it was
Cast
great.
iron pot.
Yeah.
I think there's some spices and like a bit of garlic in there as well.
Yeah. One interesting thing, and I don't know if it's a bit of foreshadowing or what. I thought that scene. I thought Millie and Matt Smith were brilliant in that standoff. I love it when they delve into their Valerian kind of secret talk, like almost like twins, like developing their own weird language so no one else can hear them. There was a moment, and I don't know if anyone else picked up on it, where Daemon's talking about succession and trying to find a bride, and Rhaenyra just says, "I'm right here, Uncle." And I thought, oh, hang on a sec. We know that they like to keep it close. We know. What do we think? Was that a little bit kind of unintentional? Like, come and get me, hot boy.
Do you know what? That was the thing that I took away from it the most as well. I thought that scene, even though there were dragons in it, and there was the standoff with Otto Hightower, and all of that, and the gold cloaks and whatnot. That moment was what I took away, thinking, these two, they've got a torch for each other, and there's a deeper connection between them. She can kind of calm him down. She can kind of like, put him back on the straight and narrow. He's never going to go against her, because really they could have just gone hammer and tongs with both of their dragons at that point. But he's like, you're younger than me, but we're family. We've probably got a history to make together a bit further down the line. So whatever happens, I'm never going to hurt you, if that makes sense.
There was, the dragons arriving at that was just great. With Cyrax appearing out of the smoke was just was great, wasn't it? What do you think to that, Chris? Do you think that they're starting to? There's a bit of subtext going on there where they're starting to see the similarities in each other and maybe drawing towards each other.
Well, I think generally, this is as a show is just so much hornier than Game of Thrones. Like, everyone in this show is quite just hitting on everyone. And I even thought Alicent and Rhaenyra last episode, there was a bit of sapphic sisterhood going on. And it's constant. Yeah. Everyone
with the kind of there was
sort of laying
the
in her
hug
lap
behind her.
Laying in her lap, reading, and I just think there is a real
I thought that too.
Sexual charge to it in a way that, and it's kind of obviously awful because most of them are children, but in Game of Thrones it was all very Jon Snow being oh, I don't know what to do down there. And these lot are just nah, we've literally read the Kama Sutra, we know what we're doing. But I think I think Rhaenyra sees her dad as being a bit useless, and I think she sees her uncle as having that fire in his belly. And even if he is a bit of a chaos agent, he does it with quite a lot of conviction, which her dad doesn't have. And I just think she's drawn to that as a sort of mentor, as an uncle, but also, they're gonna pair off to sort of fight the Viserys and Alicent sort of partnership.
I mean, that's I guess let's touch upon it now. My favorite moment, and it was just like a split second moment, was at the end. Was where Viserys announced Alicent as his queen. Rhaenyra just did this. She just preempted it by about 3 seconds, didn't she? And just looked from her dad to her best mate, and was just like, "You have got to be fucking kidding me!" And it was just such a well-acted moment, proper goosebumps. There was fury in her face. It was brilliant. I loved that, and I think you're absolutely right, Chris. That's. I think we can probably call that now. Is that niece and uncle are gonna bump uglies and go against best friend and dad? I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Talk about Viserys before we get on to Nonce-gate, as I'm going to call it.
Oh God.
Viserys is not well. We didn't see the back, the saw on the back, but what we did see was quite interesting. Was the finger that got that tiniest of a nick from the throne in the week before is now gangrenous. It's being treated by maggots, and they're just trying to save it from rotting flesh. I love that mythology that the throne will eventually eat you, and we touched upon it a bit. What do we think's wrong with Viserys? Is it just the pox? Is it something as slightly more mythical? What do you think, Chris?
I think we sort of touched on this a little bit last episode, but I think it's just he's dying, kind of slowly dying, decaying. Maybe is a bit of a more apt term, and it's just not getting better. And I think I think it's just being used as a way to signal how inept he is. And it's not his fault, but the throne is designed to be uncomfortable so that people don't get complacent. He sits on it a lot. He's always getting cut on it. And as we've seen, last week, didn't they sort of take they were like, we're going to send this sample to the Citadel as if they have a lab there where they can sort of test it.
A centrifuge. Yeah.
Yeah, they sort of look at it in a test tube. So they did that, and it's obviously not conclusive. Yeah, I think it's just a clever way to show him falling apart a little bit. I'm sure it'll get even worse.
Yeah. It just seemed to, it's so subtle as well, and testament to Paddy's acting is that even by episode 2, you can even 6 months since episode 2, he does seem slightly more jaded and knackered and fed up, and which does lead us into what was I think a very deftly handled section of the show, which I am crowning Nonce-gate, because it was deeply uncomfortable. It was a bit kind of like, hang on a sec, are we not going to? Are we? I think, I think it shows how far the writing of Game of Thrones has moved on. Because if this was previous series, it would have just done it and not really referenced the fact that it was slightly ropey. There would have just been belligerently kind of like, well, that's just how it was. There was that. That's how it was. And whereas now they were clearly addressing the nonce in the room, which was hang on a second, this girl's 12 years old. You can't, this is and Paddy, King Viserys was the viewer throughout that, where he was just kind of wincing his way through it. He understood that this is just how things are, but couldn't make that leap. And also with Rhaenys, the sadness of her having to kind of basically throw her daughter to this grandfather figure, just purely for political gain. What did you think to it, Rickie? I thought it was pretty well done, but also kind of like, oh my God, this actually happened.
Yeah, it was really uncomfortable to watch. Obviously, we know that it's, these things may have happened hundreds of years ago and whatnot. But you're right. The way that they dealt with it was very, very clever, and they made sure that us as the viewer knew that Viserys wasn't comfortable with that, and they highlighted it really, really well. And even the point where I think it was Lady Lena says she gives that speech about it'd be great to join the houses, and he turns to her and says, "Oh, is that what your dad told you to say?" She's like, "Yes." And then he said, "What did your mum say?" And she's like, "Oh, I wouldn't have to bed you until I was 14. So that just makes it hit home that this is really, really terrible. It shouldn't happen, and then it just points completely towards Alicent at that point, doesn't it? We know that he's going to go that way.
Yeah, who thankfully is a right an ancient 14. Thank God.
Yeah, oh my God.
Now, I want to talk about Otto Hightower because there was lots going on in the episode, but I think at the centre of almost all of it was Otto Hightower, someone who I thought at episode 1 was a kind of good guy, was always on the side of Viserys. But after the end of episode 2, I'm not quite so sure. But listeners, you may be wondering, who the hell are the Hightowers? Well, it's time for a wisdom to take you a bit deeper into the legend of House Hightower. So, House Hightower is among the oldest and wealthiest of the great houses, with most scholars believing they descend from the first men. They possess a Valyrian steel sword called Vigilance, but prefer trade over war. It's also been rumoured that some Hightowers have dabbled in alchemy and necromancy. Their seat is the Hightower in the city of Old Town. Their sigil is a white stone watchtower with a flame on top, and their motto is, "We light the way." During its early days, Old Town was threatened and sacked many times, including by the kings of the Reach House Gardener of Highgarden. The Hightowers raised strong walls and high towers to keep invaders out. Old Town was eventually brought into the realm of the Gardeners by marriage when the sea lion, King Lyman Hightower, wed the daughter of King Garland Gardner II. Goodness me. Protected by the might of Highgarden, the Hightowers focused on commerce and grew with every generation to become one of the most powerful families in Westeros. They were one of the first great lords to accept the faith of the Seven and support the establishment of the office of High Septon. Now, when Aegon the Conqueror arrived at Old Town on Dragonback, rather than resist, Lord Manfred Hightower opened his gates, and the High Septon anointed Aegon and acknowledged his right to rule all of the Seven Kingdoms. The ties between House Hightower and House Targaryen were solidified when Lord Manfred's daughter Cerise Hightower was wed to Maegor the Cruel in 25 AC. These close links have remained up until now, where we find Otto Hightower and his daughter Alicent in the inner circle of King Viserys. But where the Hightowers' loyalties will ultimately lay is, for the moment at least, uncertain. I hope you were both listening, because I will be testing you on the very specific facts about that towards the end of the episode. Right, very quickly, after the end of episode 2, Chris, one word, friend or foe? Otto Hightower, friend or foe?
Friend. That's my hot take.
Oh, Rickie, friend or foe?
Foe.
Okay, right, good. Thank God for that. So, what's he playing at? He was very keen. He's been very keen on two things. He's been very keen on a few things. One is he clearly has beef with Daemon that goes back a long way and despises him and has done everything he can to wind him up. And then secondly, he has played a really clever game in, basically becoming Viserys' father-in-law, as well as God, the family trees are crazy, aren't they? Father-in-law as well as Hand of the King. Has he had this in mind all along, do you think, Chris? Or is he just kind of like, did he just see an opportunity and ran with it?
I don't think he had it in mind a long time, but in the first episode, very soon after Viserys' wife died, Otto was like, why don't you go and hang out with him, wear one of your mother's dresses. Very strange thing to say to like a 15-year-old. You know, he's like got a bottle of a number 5 on the dresser. Like, just take that with you. You know, like I think
take some Lambrini with you.
But I think like the reason I think he's a friend is that he is doing. Everyone does stuff in their own interests, right? And it is in his interests to get his daughter kind of as a queen on the throne, as a mother of the future king. But yeah, I think he just thinks that all the other opportunities are having more Targaryens wed each other, or having House Valerian involved, and I just don't think he feels that would be beneficial for his standing. He's a hand, he's a second in command, but it's a pretty shaky job, you know, so the better thing to do is to sort of plant Alicent there, and sort of, if she's there, then he's fine. And it's kind of just thinking of it that way, I suppose.
What do you think, Rickie? Why is you think he's going all in?
I think he's foe, simply just because, you know, it's not a very learned opinion. It's just basically based on the fact that he reminds me of Littlefinger. I just get real Littlefinger vibes from him, and the way that he goes about his work and the way that he goes about kind of just moving the chess pieces with, you know, 2 or 3 moves in mind, like ahead of himself, if that makes sense. You know, you could kind of see his brain working with getting Alicent to go to see Viserys, like Chris was saying. Wear the dress, wear one of your mother's dresses and whatnot. And then there's that scene where he's getting ready to go to Dragonstone, and she's kind of like putting on his chainmail and whatnot. And then he's like, oh, what are you doing with your fingers? You know, you make sure you go and see the king tonight. You're going to go and see him. He's really trying to push that narrative. I was watching it with my partner, and she was like, is he kind of like sending her to go and like do the deed? And I was like, I don't think he's doing that. But I think he's just trying to cement that relationship, trying to grow that relationship, so that when it comes to the point where the king has to choose, that he's already got that back catalogue of emotion and kind of narrative with her, so that he chooses her over whoever else is, you know, put to the fore, which is what happens with, you know, Lady Laena, I should say.
I got the feeling off camera it was Otto that repaired the dragon kind of little statuette. I think it was probably him that got the airfix out and right, kind of like he was like, right, I'll fix this. Take this to him. Yeah. I love that I love that kind of like. I mean, of all the things that to spend all your time on, his like little model railway kind of room is great, isn't it?
It's
He's
brilliant.
gonna have to paint. He's gonna have to paint that one day, though. It's very monochrome. You know that needs some light and shade there. You know,
Needs some depth.
any model railway enthusiast would be like, "Oh, I've got some of that sponge that looks like
Yeah.
bushes. He needs a bit of that to kind of
A
put
few
around."
cotton wool balls as sheep, just sort of dotted around.
Exactly.
I thought though, like, I do think, I know that her going to his room and everything is a bit gross because she's so young, but like she's taken an interest and she's been like getting to know him for like a long time, and they clearly have like some sort of connection that he didn't think with Leno was going to be there because
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And also, she's not innocent in the whole thing either, is she? You know, it definitely feels like she saw a bit of an opportunity and thought, actually, I could be in with a shout here. You know, she shouldn't seem coerced in any way, does she?
No, she seems like she knows what the task is at hand. I think there was a scene in the first episode where she was chatting to Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra's kind of I think they're in the garden and Rhaenyra's not taking things seriously. She's like, take this seriously. This is serious stuff. So she really takes being at court and around court like really, really seriously. She really wants to do it well. So I think when this opportunity arose, she's going to grab it with both hands.
Absolutely.
Literally, yeah. Do you think she's a wolf in sheep's clothing then? Do you think she comes across as very kind of doe-eyed and who me, sir? Which doesn't seem as though that's the whole story, does it? What do you think, Chris? Is she going to become?
So I think what's really interesting is the Hightowers they've never been in power, and I think they are so close to getting it. And I think once they get it, if they get it, they're not going to let go. And we're about to see a lot of different people wanting the throne, and I think she will be a little bit more ferocious than we necessarily think. Maybe as she gets older, like we know she's played by Olivia Cook later in the show. I think we'll see a different side to her. None of them. It's kind of funny. Like none of them are really talking about like how they want to like rule effectively. It's all principled. Like, no, I would like to do it. Actually, I don't know what the job entails, but I would like to do it instead of anyone else. I think they're very politically savvy, and I don't think you can say that about King Viserys. And I think the Valerians are almost too, like, they want it too badly, and they're sort of stampeding around the place. I think the Hightowers are... Rickie compared Otto to Littlefinger, which I think is a good comparison. They're really playing this like a game of chess.
One thing that I'm curious about is Viserys' decision, why he made that, aside from the age thing, which clearly bothered him. He is, and it's Daemon made the statement, didn't he? He's really bad at being king, and actually he is really, really bad at being king, because on paper he should absolutely have gone with Corlys's daughter and Rhaenys' daughter. So I'm curious as to why you think he didn't. Was it purely that he just fancied Alicent? Was it that he felt that there was a genuine connection there and he went for heart over head? Because I think, clearly that decision is what's going to set the dominoes falling, because he immediately alienated his daughter. He immediately alienated Corlys, and his, and his cousin Rhaenys. Why the hell would he have done that? He doesn't seem daft. He seems pretty switched on. Rickie, what do you think? Is he just not fit for rule?
Yeah, I don't. With regards to him being a bad king, I don't think he's a bad king. I think he's got good morals. I think when he, at the end of the first episode, where he's speaking to Rhaenyra about, what do you see when you see the dragons? What do you think of? And he's trying to get that message across. This is something that, you really need to understand. I think you can kind of see that he's morally strong. He's got good morals. You can kind of see when he chats to Daemon about a lot of stuff that his moral compass is sound. However, the way that he goes about his work is quite weak. It's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it? So people can take advantage of him. And I think Daemon even says everyone on the small council is only there because they know that you're weak and that, they can get whatever they want from you. So he's not a very good king in terms of action, but he's morally sound.
Chris?
Yeah, I think he's. Yeah, I agree completely with what Ricky just said. He's not. He's ineffective, but he's not a bad person. But one of the things I thought when I watched this episode in terms of why he chose Allison is if Lena is that young, there is, and bear in mind no one knows about his poor health. There is a possibility he would die before she's able to bear a child. And I think
point.
that was a big thing. Like and no one knows that he's like rotting away from the inside, and so I think that's a big problem that he can't divulge, because if he tells his cousin Rhaenys, "Oh yeah, I'm actually really ill," then she's gonna like capitalize on that and try and get him out of the way, and so I think that's a big part of it also. But when they had that conversation on Driftmark, I thought that little child was asking a lot of questions about his dragons. Yeah. And there was reference to this dragon that had kind of gone missing. That she said, "Oh, we can hear it sometimes because it's across the narrow
that was
sea." Was it Vhagar?
Vhagar.
So that was Viserys' dragon, wasn't it? Who got so big, who was apparently like
Viserys was
Balerion the Dread.
Viserys is the one that died.
Right.
Viserys
That's
the one that died. But this is one of the This is like sibling, one of the dragons that was used to conquer Westeros back in the day from Aegon the Conqueror. It's like literally the size of like a jumbo jet, and it flew off, and they don't know where it is. And she was asking like, "Do you know where is it? Like where is it?" And I think that's her family being like, "We want to find this fucking dragon."
It was Visenya's dragon. It was Visenya's dragon.
Oh, okay. Right.
Visenya's dragon. Okay. So I think that whole conversation threw him a bit, because this child, her parents have kind of gone, yeah, just ask this, get back and we'll take notes. I think it felt very threatened by that, and I think Allison, it does not pose a threat to him in the same way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a great, well remembered, because that bit in there was a good bit of foreshadowing, wasn't it? It's kind of like, oh, there's this. So hang on a sec. When we're talking about Dance of the Dragons and kind of like dragons owning all the power, there is this mythical thing that could literally just come in and just knock 7 bells of merry shit out of all of your little dragons. Visenya, for those wondering, was Aegon's sister wife. So that's like, so quite an old dragon as well.
I was also going to say, just as a sort of dragon watch, keeping tabs, Rhaenys, I believe, does have a dragon herself, because she obviously is a Targaryen. Corlys' wife, queen that never was. I think she's got one, and they have a few on Driftmark, I think.
Yeah.
So,
but presumably then, because they say that
shit ton of them to duke it out at some point.
So if any Targaryens can ride dragons, presumably the daughter that Viserys spurned would be able to ride a dragon herself.
Yeah,
love that.
That's why I wondered why she's asking where it is. Maybe she wants it.
Oh, imagine that. The second queen that never was takes over the biggest
child riding a massive.
Amazing. Question again, knee jerk. How long is Otto for this world? Do you think Otto's going to stick around, or is someone going to off him pretty quickly, Chris?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think he'll be around for a while. I think he'll be around for a bit. I think he's smart.
Ricky, what do you think?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think Otto's in it for the long haul. I think he's got a lot of chess pieces to put in place and a lot of plot twists to kind of be the main protagonist with regards to things that are going to happen. I think he's going to have a big say in where the narrative goes in this show.
Amazing, love it. Right, what we're going to do now is we are all about to watch the teaser for episode 3 of House of the Dragon and see what little pieces of information we can glean from it. Have a listen to this. Wow.
Wow.
It's all kicking off. Initial reactions to that, Chris?
First of all, Alison's already had a child.
Yeah, Boris Johnson. She's giving birth to Boris Johnson.
Absolutely. So Aegon, the classic Westerosi name. So real, like, he's obviously going to be the future king. So we've got this succession challenge established by episode 3, and also that amazing looking fight with Mr. Crabman, or whatever he's called, with the dragons.
I don't think he's not named after the guy that turns up at the pub quizzes with some fish sticks, mate. I think he's a bit more serious than that.
What's he called? The crab
feeder.
Crab feeder.
Yeah. I love the opening line. The road ahead is uncertain, but the end is clear. I mean, that's George R.R. Martin's just remit for anyone getting involved in writing Game of Thrones, isn't it? It's like, we know how it ends.
Yeah.
We know. Rickie, what did you think?
It looks phenomenal. It looks absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it was a bit of a surprise to see that that Aegon was already about 4 years old, maybe 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But that aside, it looks so good, and you can obviously see, you know, that the pathway that we're going down. But also throwing and Daemon Targaryen in there as well. He looks like he's going to have like a good old battle against the crab feeder, and maybe, like, you know, pour himself in some glory or whatnot. So, well, we'll see.
Yeah, we saw a dragon swoop onto the beach in the distance, didn't we? And then Daemon looking right in the thick of it. It looks fantastic. Cannot wait to see what happens there. See if Alison continues her transformation into Kate Middleton, to see if it was indeed Boris Johnson that she'd given birth to. And I have to confess, I have had a sneak peek of episode 3. And if you're a fan of Twitter and of funny people of Twitter, watch out for a cameo in episode 3, because there is one of my favourite comedians on Twitter who is an actor who got a bit of a break, and I spoke to them a couple of days ago, and they were so excited. They had no idea even if their scene had made the final cut. So we're delighted when they heard that it had. So watch out for that.
Jamie, I thought you were implying that you were making a cameo, and I was like,
"Oh God, holy shit! Do you think I would have told? Do you think I would have been able to keep that secret? I'm the worst person to give a cameo to on anything. I'd have been selfie sticks. I would have been the guy with the water bottle in the side of the camera shot. It would have been a disaster."
I've seen the non-disclosures that HBO make us sign. They are watertight, so
brutal.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past you.
Well, listen, Rickie, thanks so much for joining us. And you're about to, has the heir to your throne arrived yet?
Not yet. We're about a week away, so soon,
Fantastic.
very, very soon. The bloodline continues.
Amazing. Well, good luck to you, buddy. And
Thank you,
and you can catch Rickie on Radio 1 pretty much all the time. And Chris, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Chris_Mandle, Instagram ChrisMandle1, and yeah.
And here as well. Here every single week.
And here. Also, I'm gonna come on the Twitter Spaces next week and talk.
Brilliant. That'd be great. Lovely stuff. That'd be fab. Yeah. So do join us next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, obviously, blah, 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 share, like, subscribe, the things that every podcaster or YouTuber is legally obliged to say at the end of every video ever. Help us maintain our #1 spot. You know, Commode is the Daemon to my Viserys. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy.
Coming for you.
Until next time, thanks for listening to Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragons. There will be a new episode of Dragoncast, home of House of the Dragon, every single week. Do us a favour, subscribe, like, leave us a comment, let us know what you think of the podcast. Follow us on Twitter at dragoncast.pod, or send us an email, dragoncast@daftdoris.com. Thanks very much.